Welcome back to Relax Radio. That's right. With me, Nick, giving you guys company and entertain with what is going on right now in the UK. We're talking about a lot of things. And in case you guys are wondering who this is, my name is Nick, and I'm keeping you guys company on Real Talk all the way to 6 p.m. And if you have any indications or shout outs or you want to know something about me, hey, feel free to hit me up. The magical numbers. It is 07852-473-473. Those are the magical numbers. And getting back to it though, if you also, if you're on social media, if you want to check us out on social media, hey, we're pretty big on Instagram. We're pretty big on Facebook as well. We're pretty big on Twitch, and we're on Twitter. We keep it up with all of the latest posts and comments. And also don't forget to download the app from the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. Carry us all day, every day. And with that, though, getting to the topic at hand right now, it is the Janssen single-dose COVID vaccine approved by the UK. So, it's finally here. The next vaccine is already on our doorsteps, and it looks like, the roadmap to the lockdown releasing is finally upon us. And it's about time, I've been waiting for it. And, it looks like the Prime Minister is going to keep good on his promise. So a single dose of the COVID vaccine made by the Janssen has been approved for use in the UK by the medicines regulator. And the vaccine was 85% effective in stopping severe illness from COVID-19 in trials and has met the expected safety regulations and guidelines. So 20 million doses has been ordered for the UK and will arrive later this year. So the plan is, like I said, everyone is going to get vaccinated, and hopefully we're going to have a surplus so we can give those away to the nations and the countries that really require it as well as us. So this will be the fourth vaccine to be used in the UK. And it's going to be protecting, hopefully it'll protect us completely from the COVID-19. So more than 38 million people, have received their first dose of the vaccine in the UK, and nearly 3/4 of the adult population. So the vaccine will be given to people and, between the ages of 18 and above, and is likely to be used as a booster jab for care home residents ahead of winter because it can easily be stored and transported at fridge temperature. So this is the problem when it comes to these other vaccines as well. Like when it comes to Pfizer vaccine, Pfizer and biotech, the problem is you'll have to store it in a minus 28 degrees Celsius. And it's not as easy as you think, to store a vaccine like that. That's where the AstraZeneca has risen. It's because of that, the practical uses, the practical applications of the AstraZeneca vaccine is more noticeable in comparison. So the Janssen vaccine is going to be pretty much the same thing as much as the AstraZeneca and the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. And this is this something that is going to be really important. And the UK's vaccine committee, the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunization, the JCVI, will produce advice on exactly who should receive the Belgian-made jab in due course. And the single dose option has been already been authorized by the European Medicines Agency and the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA in the US, and the World Health Organization. So you can see there's a bunch of other big political bodies as well involved in all this, and they're happy, and it's great to see. It's great news for me. I feel like this is the step that we needed. This is the kind of good news that we need right now, where we get another vaccine underway, and this looks like it's going to be really effective as well. So the more people we get vaccinated, the more closer we are to the release of this whole lockdown situation. And I'm glad to see that. I'm glad to see people are coming forward. Also, the faith when it comes to the vaccine, the faith in the vaccine has risen actually monumentally, and the people are more comfortable and they have more trust in the vaccine in comparison to a couple of months ago, where there was a lot of this talk about the possibility of risks. I mean, Janssen, we still don't know exactly if there's any risk, but as it appears, it looks like they've passed the test, the safety regulatory test. So let's see how it goes. And Nadeem Zahawi, the vaccine deployment minister, said the Janssen option would be another weapon in our arsenal to beat this pandemic. And he went on to say, we're doing everything we can to vaccinate all adults as quickly as possible. And I encourage everyone and everybody to come forward and for a jab as soon as possible, and as they are eligible. So the Janssen jab uses the same technology as the Oxford AstraZeneca, and it's likely to be more suitable for older adults and then comparison to the younger adults in the UK. So under 40s are going to be offered an alternative to AstraZeneca vaccine in the UK because of a potential link to a type of blood, this very, very super rare blood clot. Yeah, and this is, of a concern. People were afraid to use it, especially a lot of the youngsters as well. They were looking for better alternatives. So this is why a lot of them did not step forward to get the vaccine, and a lot of them didn't come forward, when they were asked to sign up and book appointments to get their vaccinations done. And yeah, it's great news to see that this is something that is going along, and they are making sure to follow through with this. And another reason, why it is a good thing is because, like I said, it is going to get more people quickly vaccinated, and we're going to reach the roadmap as soon as we can. And that's something, something to look forward to. I'm glad to see that is happening, and we're going to reach that point where we will reach herd immunity. It looks like it's going to happen. Hopefully it will happen. And this is something to look forward to. So the US, South African, and the European Union briefly paused the rollout of the vaccine, the AstraZeneca vaccine back in April. Also, they've also paused the rollout on the Johnson & Johnson after reports of this rare blood clots in very small numbers of people after their jab. So the US is offering the vaccine to people over 18 after concluding that the benefits of using it outweighs any sort of risk. And currently it's being tested as part of a UK study to find out essentially whether a third dose could protect against this whole new variant. Another good news right there. Right now, like I said, in the UK, we are the number one when it comes to genomic studies and genomic sequencing. We are the number one foremost body in the world, foremost authority in the world, and we focus on all of this. So right now, we are looking for another way, whether another third booster could actually be effective against this whole new Indian variant that is surging right now in places like in Bolton and in places like in Glasgow. So hopefully this is something, something that we can look forward to. And Dr. June Rain, the head of the body which approves vaccine in the UK, they said they're also involved with the Medicine and Health Products Regulatory Agency, the MHRA, has said information on quality, safety, and effectiveness of the Janssen jab had been thoroughly reviewed. So they don't want to make the same mistake they made with the AstraZeneca. And it's great. It's understandable. Like I said, we don't want another vaccine to come into the country and for that to only be, for people to suddenly not trust in it and then have it stopped. And that's just something that we don't want. We want the people to come forward, step forward, make sure they get vaccinated. And this is the best way to do it. So hopefully a third vaccine, they're looking for the benefits right now. They're not quite sure what is going on. Hopefully this is something that they can do. Hopefully this is also something that can be approved along the way, along with the lockdown, the way the situation is going moving forward. Like this is, for me, I'm glad. You can see it. You can see it on my face. I'm super happy to see that there's another vaccine out there. It's going to help curb the number of cases and the possibility of transmission as well, reduce the possibility of transmission. This is something to look forward to. And just another thing, in the UK right now with the situation, all the people are wondering, why, we got another vaccine, are we eligible? Well, to see that right now, the MHRA is saying that they've reviewed the vaccine and they say, okay, based on quality, safety, and effectiveness of this jab, well, it's been thoroughly reviewed. And so we can say for a fact it's safe. And she went on to say, we now have these 4 safe and effective vaccines approved to help people and protect us from the COVID-19. And she added, that their work will not end there. Their work does not stop there. And they will be continually monitoring all the COVID-19 vaccines in use once they have been approved to ensure that the benefits in protecting people against the disease continue to outweigh any sort of risk. So the safety of the public will always come first, is what they say. And you can be absolutely sure of our commitment to this. She says this with full seriousness. It's great. Like I said, this is the positive. When you weed out the positive, this is the thing that we need right now. The positive news to see that, the UK is stepping forward. More good news. We've been plagued with a lot of these bad news happening, with all of the situation going around. To see something like this happening is something to look forward to. So the MHRA said pregnant or breastfeeding moms should decide whether to have the Janssen option in consultation with a healthcare professional after considering the benefits and the probable risks of it. So another reason why they're telling us, to watch out. Make sure if you're a pregnant woman, make sure you consult with your doctors, your local GP as well, and ask them if you are eligible for this vaccine. Should you be taking it, especially if you're breastfeeding or you're pregnant as well. This is something that you have to watch out on. And yeah, that's just another great thing to see, with the UK moving forward from all of these situations. For me, you can see the excitement in my voice. Like it's something to, like I said, we are glad that this is happening. We are trying to reduce the amount of cases, because right now there are places that, especially with the recent talks, they were talking about some local lockdowns and local restrictions on certain areas, travel restrictions on certain areas. And yeah, this has also got to do with something that Cummings also is talking about. So, we'll go into more detail about that as we go along in the show. There's something that we're going to be talking about all these things, happening in the UK and right now and across, all of the UK, and all of these issues that we are, addressing. And yeah, hopefully this is something that we can look forward to. And yeah, we're also going to be talking about, the Boris Johnson's advisor, who was his former advisor, and the 7 most explosive contents and comments that he said recently. And in case you guys are wondering, make sure you guys stick in and find out for more on that. And also we'll be talking about climate change and the world at risk, hitting these temperature limit soon. So in case you're wondering, this is what we are talking about. Get back to the net zero emissions. So in 2050, the plan is to cut out completely on carbon emission. That's the plan. That is what they want to do. But this is what they're saying right now is it's inevitable that the temperature is actually going to rise. It's going to reach that point. We're going to reach that wall soon. So we got to take action right now. So make sure, you guys stick into the show and find out for more. And if you have any comments or you have anything to say, you can always feel free to hit me up. The numbers to do so are 078-52-473-473. Those are the magical numbers. And with that, we are going to be taking our real quick break, and we will be right back after this. Welcome back to Relax Radio. This is me, Nick, keeping you guys company all the way until 6 p.m. That's right. We're talking about all the stuff that is going on. And yeah, the good news is the vaccine. Yeah, the vaccine is here. The fourth vaccine is here, Janssen & Janssen. And yeah, that's something to be looking forward to. I mean, you guys can always tell me, what your guys' thoughts are on the matter. You can always hit us up on those numbers. 07852-473-473. And also, don't forget, you can check us out on our webpage, www.relaxradio.net. And also, check us out on our apps as well. You can check us out and you can listen to us 365, 24/7. Download our apps from the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. Carry us all day, every day, 365. 24/7. And hey, getting back to the topic at hand, that is going on in the UK is Dominic Cummings. Yeah, the hot news of what his statements are going on. It's spreading right now in the UK. It's like wildfire, actually, when you come down to think of it. It's there's been a lot of shade thrown to Boris Johnson over the past couple of months. And the topic at hand, though, is who is Dominic Cummings? Well, the Prime Minister's former chief advisor, Dominic Cummings, is still being a name in Westminster, even though he's no longer at number 10. So once a very, very super hugely powerful figure, he left Downing Street's role. And at the end of the last year, following an internal power struggle, and that was between Boris Johnson and him, but he continued to make headlines, attacking politicians and officials, and for their handling of the situation of the pandemic in the country. And he continued that criticism back on Wednesday as well, where he gave explosive evidence to MPs investigating how the government handled the crisis. However, it was not the first time that he raised eyebrows in number 10 since leaving the post. So yeah, Dominic Cummings did have these internal disputes with the handlings of what's happening, in Downing Street. And it shows, after being named in media reports as a source of government leaks, he launched a scathing attack on Mr. Johnson via a 1,000-word blog post back in April. Yeah, this is back in April where he released something like this. And yeah, he made very, very explosive comments about that. And there was a Bernard Castle trip. His trip to his parents' home in County Durham during the first national lockdown when his wife was suffering COVID symptoms became the stuff of social media legend. So dominating all these tabloids, front pages and the national conversation for a lot of days. So he also succeeded in putting the historic market town of Barnard Castle on the map. So yeah, Mr. Cummings said he had visited the town with his family. The whole point of it was to test his ability to drive back to London after experiencing a loss of vision due to the coronavirus. So this explanation, which launched 1,000 memes, came during an unprecedented press conference in the Downing Street Garden to explain the trip. And he said that he traveled to Birmingham because he believed both he and his wife were about to be laid low with coronavirus, and he wanted to guarantee his 4-year-old son's safety. And he went on to say, I don't regret what I did. And he told journalists the situation that he was in exceptional circumstances. And he said, okay, I'm in this position right now where, this is not something that I wanted to do, but it happened. And, just go with the flow is what he was trying to say. And he says that he doesn't regret doing any of these things that he's done. And he also said that the situation was in exceptional circumstances is, how he was trying to address this whole, the whole point, in fact, the whole problem. And it just shows, the issue at hand. And it's crazy. And he said, he traveled to Durham because he believed both he and his wife were about to be laid down. So he said all of this. And Boris Johnson stood over his advisor throughout this episode to the coronation of, the consternation of some of the people as well. And a lot of people were not, happy about this whole thing. And to address this whole situation, he went on and he said, the situation was exceptional. And a lot of people also feared, what was happening. The situation was in exceptional circumstances. And Boris Johnson, throughout this whole episode, some of the people, of his supporters, were also really rather frustrated, who feared it was undermining his attempts to hold the country together during a national lockdown. So some people said that this episode burned through the political capital the Prime Minister had generated months earlier during the 2019 elections. Yeah, that's right. And it's hard to overstate how important Mr. Cumming was to the Johnson project. So he was a ruthless strategist. So the two very, very different characters. Mr. Johnson likes to be popular, while Mr. Cumming appears indifferent to such concerns. He doesn't really bother about that whole external factor. But they formed like a very strong bond in the heat. Back in 2016, the Vote Leave campaign to get Britain out of the EU, which Mr. Cummings led as a campaign director. And ever since then, they've been an unstoppable combination. They've been an amazing duo. So a lot of these, many of these policy ideas that have shaped the Johnson government's agenda have, it was involved with Dominic Cummings. He was involved in a lot of these things. His fingers were in a lot of these places, pun intended for that. And yeah, he was leveling up and moving more power and money out of London and the southeast of England. So this is all the Cummings project. So the team that surrounded Cummings at Downing Street, though, some of them who are, Vote Leave veterans, were fiercely loyal to Dominic Cummings and shared, his sense that outsiders in Whitehall essentially are battling an entrenched elite. So, coming down to all these things, this is just, who Dominic Cummings was, and the whole situation. And he was he faced a lot of questions from media's, from his house, and he emerged in 2017 as a special advisor to Michael Gove, who became education secretary back in 2010 and turned out to be something of a very he was a very kindred spirit, I'd like to say. And this pair would rail across what they call the blob and all that, and they formed an alliance of senior civil servants, and they were all, a part of all of these things. And his appointment as the head of the Vote Leave campaign, was dramatized back in, there was a very big program back then. So it was seen as a risk worth taking by those, putting up his campaign and all of that. So right now, Mr. Dominic Cummings, like I said, is making headlines. He's at the top of all these things. So he is the former chief advisor for Boris Johnson. And during a 7-hour joint session of the Commons Health and Science and Technology Committees, Mr. Cummings made a number of allegations. And here are just a couple of points that he talked about. So he says, number one, the government failed. He says tens of thousands of people died who didn't need to die. And he said that, he said sorry for ministers, officials, and advisors like me for falling disastrously short of the expectations and the standards that the public has a right to expect. And he says that he's failed the general public. He's failed a lot of people, and as the minister, he takes responsibility for this. And when the public needed us the most, the government failed, he added, apologizing to families of those who died unnecessarily during this whole period. And Mr. Cummings also went on to say, that the government was not on a war footing when the virus emerged in January and February last year, and lots of key people were still literally skiing, and they didn't really give a care about this whole virus, spreading about. They didn't really bother about it. It wasn't really registered into their heads, is what he's trying to say. They didn't take into account that this is going to be so serious as it is. And he says the PM, the Prime Minister, is not fit for office. That is one of also the explosive things that he said during this committee meeting. And Mr. Cummings went on to say, a series of all of these allegations against his former boss, Boris Johnson, including how he dismissed the emerging coronavirus as the new swine flu and just a scare story, and pledged to be injected live on TV with the virus so everyone realizes it's nothing to be frightened of. I mean, looking back on that, to be saying something like that, it's terrible, actually. And he was also 1,000 times too obsessed with the media. And he appeared to be persuaded, by a lot of these big media companies. And he also said he would rather see bodies pile up than order a third lockdown. And this was back in autumn of 2020. This is what Dominic Cummings revealed, about Boris Johnson talking about this. And these are very serious allegations. He did say that he would rather see bodies pile up high than order a third lockdown. And this was very confirmed, although it contradicts the Prime Minister's denials. The Prime Minister did say no, he didn't really say something like this, and it was taken out of context. And it shows, these are things that his closest ally, his right hand, literally, it's like, I'd not say exactly betray him, but rather shed some light on who exactly Boris Johnson is and what he is doing. And he added, they took terrible dives, and he described a decline in his relationship with Mr. Johnson after the summer of 2020. He said it was clear in July that our relationships were far from where they had been, and where they started to where they are right now is, he's saying, it's changed. A lot of these things have changed, and it's not as much as it was before. And he's saying it's concerning. What happened to Boris Johnson right now? He's a whole different person, a whole different kind of individual. And he added, that they look terrible dive. They took this another terrible dive after the second lockdown in October because the prime minister knew that he blamed him for the whole situation, and he did not. By 2031, the 31st of October, their relationships were essentially finished. It was done. It was finito. So he went on to say, the heart of the problem was fundamentally he regarded Boris Johnson as unfit for the job, and he was trying to create a structure around him to try and stop what he thought would have been bad decisions and push things against his wishes. So asked later by Labour MP Sarah Owen whether Boris Johnson was fit and a proper person to get us through this whole pandemic, Mr. Cummings replied, actually, he did say no. So Downing Street rejected many of the remarks, and Mr. Johnson insisted his government at the last stage tried to minimize the loss of life. And these are just, some of the comments, some of the blazing comments that you're hearing right now. That is, what Dominic Cummings did say. And hey, if you have any thoughts about this, you can always hit us up. Let us know. Reminding you, the numbers are 07852473473. That's right. Those are the numbers. And also, you can always check us out on our app. We're on Twitter as well, with the latest tweets, especially with the topics regarding this. And getting back at hand, he did say something else as well. Hancock said that Hancock should have been fired, is what Dominic Cummings did say. And he said Mr. Cummings, appeared to reserve his harshest criticism, and it was a really harsh criticism for the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock. And he said Hancock should have been fired for at least 15 to 20 things. And he alleged the Health Secretary, rather, displayed criminal, disgraceful behavior as he held back the coronavirus tests and meddled in efforts to build a mass testing system in order to meet this stupid pledge of 100,000 tests per day in April 2020. And lied during meetings held in the Downing Street cabinet room, including about testing people before they were discharged from hospital into these care homes during the first wave. And he also used the UK's chief scientific advisor, Sir Patrick Vallance, and chief medical advisor, Chris Whitty, as a shield. So he used them as body bags in front of him for the government's failing at this whole government, this Downing Street news conferences. He used these people. These were the people in the forefront while he hid, is what he was alleging. And Mr. Cummings also said, and the UK then most senior servant, Sir Mark Sedwell, recommended to the Prime Minister that Matt Hancock be sacked in April 2020. This is something also, that he alleged. And the Prime Minister did not sack Matt Hancock because some felt he would have been convenient fall guy during any of the future public inquiry. So a spokesperson for Matt Hancock later did say that we absolutely reject Mr. Cummings' claims about the Health Secretary. And Matt Hancock also went on to add that he had not seen Mr. Cummings' evidence to MPs in full and insisted, I've been dealing with getting the vaccination rollout going, especially to over 30s, and saving lives, is what he's saying. And he added, that he would make a statement in the comments on Thursday. And he was talking about this, and he'd say that he had a lot more to say. And these are just, one of the things that Dominic Cummings was talking about. So the first lockdown delay, Mr. Cummings said it was obvious in retrospect that the UK should have locked down in the first weeks of March at the latest. And it was a huge failure on his part not to alert the Prime Minister. So he did add that I bitterly regret that I didn't hit the emergency panic button earlier than I did. And Mr. Cummings went on to say that on the 14th of March, where the first lockdown did happen, this was the first, marking the point, Boris Johnson had been told the models showing the peak of infections was weeks and weeks away in June were completely wrong. So he was given false information regarding that. And Mr. Cummings said the meetings came after the then Deputy Cabinet Secretary Helen McNamara relayed concerns that there were no plans and we are in huge trouble. And he said the Prime Minister was warned that the NHS was going to be smashed in weeks and they really have got days to act. And these are just, some of the things that he tried to address and tried to make aware to the Prime Minister. And Mr. Boris Johnson announced a national lockdown 9 days later on the evening of the 23rd of March. And this is just, some of the things that they were talking. And Mr. Cummings also said something else: bombs, quarantines, and delaying. yeah, this he painted a vivid picture of the chaotic atmosphere in Downing Street on one crazy day in March 2020 when the government was considering this whole national lockdown at the same time as officials considered a bombing campaign in Iraq. So yeah, one morning he claimed the national security people came in and said US President, the former president, Donald Trump wants us to join a bombing campaign in the Middle East tonight. And this totally derailed meetings about quarantine and the coronavirus. So he spoke about all this. And, simultaneously, he also added that the prime minister's girlfriend was going completely crackers over a story that she said in newspapers with the headlines, Downing Street's dog to be reshuffled. And yeah, these articles reported, a Whitehall source rather, as saying they were not sure Carrie Simmons' dog's Dylan would make it through the next reshuffle due to the mess he'd created in her and Mr. Johnson's number 11 flat. So she was throwing a fit at the wrong kind of things, I think, at that moment. So Mr. Cummings also went on to say that, so we have this sort of completely insane situation where, part of the building was saying, are we going to bomb Iraq? And part of the building was arguing about whether or not we are going to do quarantine or do not do quarantine. The prime minister, his girlfriend, going crackers about something completely trivial. And that is, the matters, that they were, what he said. He did quote all of these things. And chickenpox parties is also another comment that he said. Mr. Cummings also said that as late as 12th of March last year, the UK's top civil servants championed a plan of rapid herd immunity involving chickenpox parties for the virus. And then Cabinet Secretary Sir Mark Sedwell is alleged to have suggested to Boris Johnson, Mr. Johnson, that the Prime Minister, you should go on to TV tomorrow and explain the herd immunity plan and that it is like the old chickenpox parties. We need people to get this disease because that's how we get herd immunity by September. I mean, it's terrible to be even suggesting something that get people purposely, intentionally sick, and to that point where they have to get sick, and we're going to have a lot of people going to pass away, or there's got the mortality rate would have been crazy, absolutely crazy, and that's a lot of risk for them to be saying this is something that we should have done. To get people to reach that point of herd immunity is absurd. So Mr. Cummings said that he would not use the analogy, which was not right, as according to the data experts Ben Warner, COVID was spreading exponentially and killing hundreds of thousands of people. And yeah, finally, he says one of his other final very explosive comment was the Prime Minister ignored second lockdown advice. And this is very, very controversial when you think about it. So he asked about, more recent decisions over a second lockdown in the autumn of 2020. Mr. Cummings alleged Mr. Johnson rejected a recommendation last September for a shorter stay-at-home order in England. And he went on to say he was ignoring the advice. And he added, saying the Prime Minister believed he had been pushed into imposing the first on one, and the this whole economic harm done with this whole lockdown would be worse than the COVID itself, is what he's saying. Our economy can't recover. We're going to reach to that point where, we're not going to recover. So I'm not going to do another lockdown. So forget about that whole lockdown. This is not something that is going to happen. And he added all the credible sources, people in his opinion, Mr. Cummings' opinion, were essentially saying the same thing. So he was very, very clear with him about it. So he was talking to Boris Johnson and discussing and saying, this is what's going to happen. There's a lot of people going to suffer if we don't do this. We need to put another lockdown. And this did not happen. And he went on to say, he wasn't taking any advice. He was just making his own decisions. And he was going to ignore the advice. And cabinet wasn't involved or even asked about it. They were not even talked to about regarding this. And he'd been very critical of Matt Hancock, but he thinks Hancock agreed with him actually in September about acting then. So it just goes to show, the common fallacies of the Prime Minister, of, the things that he's doing, is what he alleges, rather, what Dominic Cummings has been alleging and talking about and bringing forward to light about this. I mean, is it true or not? We don't really know exactly the source of it. Maybe it could be because of spite or anything. But what we do know is he was the closest to Boris Johnson. He was the closest to the Prime Minister at the time, and he is his former chief advisor. So it shows, that the saying where they say there is fire where there's smoke, there's fire. So where there is lies, there could be truth as well. And there could be truth in the matter at hand with this, especially, thinking and talking about all this also makes you wonder, it's because of this. Is this one of the reasons why Mr. Dominic Cummings left the parliament is, the question at hand. And Tell us what you guys think, though. Let us know. The numbers are 07852-473-473. Feel free to call me up and let me know what you think about the matter. Is there the government trying to do this? Is the government trying to do that? Or are aliens actually running the government? Let me know what your thoughts are. You can always feel free to hit me up on those numbers. Like I said, 07852-473-473. And with that, we're going to be taking a real quick break, and we will be right back after this. Welcome back to the show. This is Relax Radio with me, Nick. And, we were talking about all the stuff that Dominic Cummings was talking about and all, the problems right now and how the government is not really, properly functioning the way we thought they were functioning actually at all. And this is bringing a lot of concerns in as well. And, PM also wants to know about all these things, about the whole Downing Street issue, this issue with Dominic Cummings. These are just small things in the whole grand scheme of things. And hey, if you're wondering who this is, my name is Nick, and I'm keeping you guys company only here on Real Talk. Trying to keep it real, trying to keep it 100%. This is the place where we do it right here at Relax Radio, RELAKS. And that is, because we believe in a positivity and we don't want that negative stuff. But the truth is at the matter. If you want to hit us up and you want to know, what is going on, or you want to know what my thoughts are on something special or particular in your life as well, or something that you've noticed, well, hit me up. Let me know. 07852-473-473. And the matter at hand right now is Downing Street flat refurbishment. Yeah, that's the topic that we are going to be stretching right now. And the Prime Minister has been cleared of all kinds of misconduct. Interesting. And Boris Johnson says that he did not break the ministerial code or the fundings of the Downing Street flat refurbishment. And this is what a report is saying. So Lord Guide, the Prime Minister's advisor on standards, found he had unwisely allowed work to go ahead without more rigorous regard for how it would be paid for. Okay, now it gets interesting. He's talking. There is a man, a fall guy for this. I mean, nothing against Boris Johnson, but, it seems a little fishy when you have someone take the fall for you. It makes you wonder what is going on. Now, the blame is being shifted to someone else is the matter at hand. And this is just, another, issue at the part. And it suggests that there is something actually fishy going on with Boris Johnson. And he found out that Mr. Lord Gate, Gate said that he found that a Tory donor had settled an invoice for some of the costs, but Mr. Johnson had been unaware of this. Lord Gate had added. So no conflict of interest had arisen over the whole refurbishment, which happened last year, beginning in spring, when the Prime Minister was in the hospital with COVID. He said, and the government said official advice had been followed throughout. And the Prime Minister receives an annual public grant of £30,000 to spend on his living quarters. But it is believed that the final bill for the Downing Street flat refurbishment, reportedly overseen by Mr. Johnson's fiancée, Carrie Simmons, came to around 90,000. So that's like almost 3 times the actual price. So the Prime Minister has faced repeated questions. He's faced a lot of heat, a lot of background, where people were criticizing him negatively about this particular point. And it showed, he faced a lot of these repeated questions about how this was financed, and replying that he had funded the full costs. But he's not previously said whether this meant paying the bills upfront or repaying a money loaned to him or the government for the project. And it shows, Lord Gate's report into whether the ministerial code's governing standards in office was broken revealed that former Conservative Party Vice Chairman Lord Brownlow had paid back an early invoice without stating how large this had been paid. And, it's been really widely reported right now that the figure was around £58,000. So that's still a ginormous amount. That's still double the annual grant that he receives from the public. And there's not been any kind of further interrogation about this whole thing. People are not talking about it. There's not been a proper inquiry into this. Nothing severe is going on. So the report said that the records show no evidence that the Prime Minister had been informed by Lord Brownlow, and that he had personally settled the total costs of this early work. And it just got to going. And when the Prime Minister and the peers, told the government officials that they had not acted on this information to the extent of informing the Prime Minister, let alone offering him advice on his private interests. However, Lord Gate and Mr. Johnson had unwisely, in my view, allowed the refurbishment of the apartment to proceed without more rigorous regard for how this would be funded. And Lord Gate also went on to say, under normal circumstances, a Prime Minister might reasonably be expected to be curious about the arrangement. I mean, it comes to show, as a Prime Minister, you're also going to have to wonder, where is this actually coming from? How are we even funding this? How can we afford this? I mean, if I was in that seat, I would ask, hey, where is this money coming from? Who funded this? What's the point? Why is he even doing this for us? What are we going to gain from this? How much leverage will he hold if he does this? I mean, these are total things, he should have known. As a Prime Minister, he should have known this information was going out there. And for him not to know and feign ignorance is something that, baffles my mind even now to this date. It makes me wonder, how did he even come up with something like that and pretend like it's not even it's not even, worth talking about. And he went on to say also, Lord Gate went on to say, the financial arrangement that led to the refurbishment of the Downing Street might have, he's like, the Prime Minister should have been more curious about this and he should have interrogated more about this. But in the middle of the pandemic, Mr. Boris Johnson simply accepted that a trust he was hoping to set up to handle the work would be capable of this satisfactorily resolving the situation without further interrogation. And Lord Gate also concluded that no conflict or reasonably perceived conflicts arise from the involvement of Lord Brownlow or the Conservative Party in the Downing Street renovation. And he went on to say, of Lord Brownlow, that there is no evidence that he had acted with anything other than altruistic and philanthropic motives. And he was looking in for something like that. He was not really looking to gain anything from it. Again, it sounds like it is something very suspicious. I mean, am I curious about it? Something going on? Do I smell fish? It is kind of fishy for someone, especially when it comes to a member of the parliament or another minister or an official, giving money because he's feeling altruistic. It begs the question, why though? I mean, that's a very easy answer. So responding to the reports, a Downing Street spokesperson said it showed the Prime Minister had acted in accordance with the ministerial codes at all time. And the spokesperson also went on to add, cabinet office officials were engaged and informed throughout, and official advice was followed. And other than works funded through the annual allowance, the costs of the wider refurbishment of the flats are not being financed by taxpayers and have been settled by the Prime Minister personally. So this is not taxpayer money. So they don't have to worry about this, is what they have been trying to address. And they've been trying to bring up to light and bring up to the people up to speed, with the situation. Like, this is not, don't worry, we got this under cover. He was going through his own pocket, not the people's money. We are not using this other money, that the government is giving, or the hard-earned money that the people earn. So yeah, that's just, something about Boris Johnson and his, refurbishments of his street, his Downing Street refurbishments right there. That's a topic that was also, not really thoroughly, I feel like it's not getting as much light as it's supposed to be. This is something that, gets a question, and it feels like a little bit, I don't know if you think about it, feels like a little bit swept under the rug is the kind of word that I'm looking for right now. And yeah, it does feel like that at times where, a situation like this arises and it doesn't feel like it's being addressed properly is, it's my concern. So in case you guys know what is going on, or you have a theory about this, you have something that you want to share, well, the numbers are always open. It is 07852-473-473. Those are the magic numbers. Feel free to call us up and let us know. And also don't forget to check us out on our social media, and also download the app from the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store to carry us all day, every day. And looking at matters, involving the Indian variant right now. So yeah, COVID cases are low, but are currently creeping up, even with the release of the vaccine right now, the Janssen vaccine. There are still cases. So the coronavirus cases in the UK remain significantly low so far, but there are signs of a small increase. And this is all given the statistics given by the Office for National Statistics, or the ONS figures. So yeah, the ONS also regularly swabs a random sample of the population to estimate levels of this virus, even in people who don't have symptoms or don't get tested. So almost half of the infections picked up look like they are probably caused by the variant first identified back in India. So national data suggests it's still confined to a handful of areas, and an estimated 60,000 people, that's right, 60,000 people in the UK were infected with the virus in the last week leading up to 2020 of May. So 2022 rather, of May. So an increase of roughly 10% from this estimated 54,000 people the previous week. So that's essentially, 0.09% of the population, or 1 in 1,080 people. That's still, it's easy to say, oh, it's just 1 in 1,000, but then it piles up when the numbers increases. So that's 1 in 1,000. And then that's, what about 100,000? So that's 100 people right there. And then you keep increasing it even more and more. 1 million, that means 1,000 people. So 1,000 people are going to be affected by this. So that the numbers are still growing. So there's still not a lot of the COVID virus right now compared with the winter peaks. But there have been signs of increase in England, Scotland, and Northern Ireland in the previous fortnight. So in the past 2 weeks. In Wales, also the case remains relatively stable. So the numbers in Wales are actually at a plateau. I'd like to consider it as a plateau, but let's just stick to stable. It's pretty stable. So far this rise across the UK is small, but the data has been suggesting that there are larger rise concentrated in just a few local authorities. So yeah, the ONS data is not broken down by local authority, since they don't swab enough people. There's not enough people in these each areas to get their swab. So it makes the numbers and the readings and the estimates are not really matching or on par with that. So it's good for spotting national trends, but it's less good at picking up local variation. So on a broader spectrum, if you look at it on a broader spectrum, it's easier to find out, okay, this is where generally the virus is found. But when it comes down to localized and specialized at a specific point, it's more difficult. So a lot of these data are not quite accurate about that. So the overall increase is also small, but this hides the big spikes in areas with lots of cases of the Indian variant, including Bolton, Blackburn, and Bedford as well. These are places that are affected by this. And when it comes down to these, the Indian variants, although it's causing a lot of these local spikes, and it's yet to make a huge impact on the figures for the whole of the UK. That's right. And these national figures might partly be skewed by surge testings in areas of concern, which then picks up more of these cases. So Public Health England data, including infections found throughout surge testing, suggests more than half of new cases are the Indian variant found in India. But the ONS data, which is not influenced by these changes in the testing behavior in the same way, puts it at a little under a half. So some of these cases, those cases could be other variants. So the ONS looks for how many, these test positives for a particular gene mutation found in India, South Africa, and Brazil variants, but not in the Kent variant. So these are something, that they are trying to address. And we assume, from a lot of these genetic testings for these variants, and I say genetic testing because right now the UK, like I said, is the leading sequencing, genome sequencing body in the world, authority. We're the number one when it comes to that. So it's likely likely to be the India's variant. We can say that all of these genetic testing for these variants, a lot of it is mostly the Indian variant. We can say that, and we can pinpoint with accuracy and say that, so far, if the ONS is saying this, it's most likely to be true. So it's far more common than the others currently in the UK. So right now, this virus is actually hitting that point where it is the more commonly found virus. So the difference this time, though, is compared with the previous waves, is the vaccine, which should be breaking the link between infections and illnesses. And after 2 doses, the jabs are roughly as effective against the Indian variant as they are against the Kent variant. They're saying, okay, these vaccines that we do take, there are vaccines that you take. When we take these, for instance, the AstraZeneca vaccine, if you take that, it's going to be as roughly as effective as it is with the Kent virus in comparison with the Indian variant as well. So in Bolton, which has the highest case numbers in the UK, the vast majority of patients, are not completely vaccinated as of yet. They're not there yet. So, and most of the cases are people who are not, or who just became eligible for their jabs. So the people who did get these the virus, or who did get infected, it's mostly the people who are about to get, who are eligible for the vaccine. And that is, that's nationally, the numbers of patients, though, in hospitals has continued to fall. The number of patients and the number of people suffering from the virus right now is thankfully, it is coming to a low. We are reaching to that point, where it's at a steady decline, and that's something, that's going forward. Although there's been a little rise when it comes to the vaccine, to the virus, which is the Indian variant. And in the Northwest, which is particularly affected by the Indian variant, hospital admissions are starting to go up. So Northwest COVID hospitalization is starting to tick back up, but still well below the peak. So since cases in the UK as a whole have only just started to creep up, there may be a bigger rise in admissions to follow. So there is always a lag before an infection translates to an illness which is severe enough to send someone to hospital. And that's why a 5-week gap was left, behind each step of easing lockdown restrictions, to give enough time for those effects to be fully seen. So with this recent rise in cases, the next week or two will be crucial in seeing whether and by how much it pushes up the numbers of hospital admissions and deaths. So these figures will be key factors when government ministers decide whether the 21 of June relaxations can go ahead. And that is, of concern for a lot of people and governing bodies as well. They want to know, can we move forward with this? Can we bring this up? Are we able to do this? Will people be affected by all of these things? So, if we're going to push it, we better decide now, is, the thing that they are discussing and they're trying to get to, and they're trying to get to that point. Hopefully they can come to a conclusion, and they can come to that point where they decide, okay, this is what we're going to do as a party. We're going to move forward as the government, the leading body right now, the authority in the UK. We have the decision to decide whether relaxations can continue on the 21st, or should we push them back, because there seems to be a little bit of a tick up, an upward trend in the amount of cases, when especially with regards to the Indian variant. So let me know what you guys' thoughts are on this on this matter. If you have anything you want to say, or you think that we should actually push lockdowns back, let me know on those numbers. 078-52473-473. Those are the magical numbers. And hey, with that though, we are going to be taking a real quick break, and we will be right back after this. Welcome back to the show. We are talking about all things related and real. We're trying to keep it real 100% right here. And hey, in case you guys are wondering who this is, my name is Nick, and I'm keeping you guys a company all the way until 6 p.m. That's right. If you have any thoughts or opinions on that matter, you can feel free to hit me up. The numbers, it's 07852-473-473. You can always feel free to hit me up on our magical numbers and let me know, what your thoughts are on that matter. And yeah, that's right. You can always check us out on our social media pages. We are also pretty big on Facebook and Instagram, and you can check us out on YouTube as well. We drop out a video with like hot pancakes. I'm kind of hungry for hot pancakes right now for some odd reason. Yeah, but anyways, getting back to the topic at hand, what we've been talking about, all the stuff that is going on, the pressing matters of the UK and how the government is handling all these things. And right now, a lot of heat is coming on to Boris Johnson, with the pandemic happening, with the rise in number of cases in the Indian variant, with the rise as well in, Dominic Cummings coming out on the blue in public and talking about these issues regarding, how about the fallacies of Boris Johnson. And then we have the refurbishment issue. And on top of that, all of these issues lining up and building up. And then we have the lockdown issues. And to top it all off, the other biggest thing is the risk of climate change. Yeah, that's right. There is the world risk at hitting the temperature limit soon. So right now, this is one of the biggest primary concerns in the UK. Yes, Boris Johnson is talking about net zero. He's trying to get that, into play. And these are just one of the things he's trying to show. The UK right now is trying to grow. It's trying to grow. Grow is actually a good word. Trying to grow green. Yeah, that's right. We're trying to grow green, and we're trying to get into the zero emission. So zero emission by the time 2050 hits. So are we getting there? We are. We're transitioning at the point right now. There is pressure to a lot of these coal mines. There's not going to be any new coal mines. There's not going to be any more new fossil fuels. We're trying to transition into electric cars. This is the plan. They're trying to get this all on board. COP26 is happening, although the issue right now with Glasgow is a whole different thing. I don't want to talk about that right now. But yeah, there's just a lot of these cases. There's the Indian variant happening there. So will it come? I mean, this is something that, we can't really say for sure right now, the situation. Hopefully before that can even begin, this whole issue with the Indian variant will resolve. And yeah, like I said, the world is at risk right now. The world is at a risk, and there is temperatures rising, and it's becoming more likely, that a key global temperature limit will be reached in one of the next 5 years. That's right. In the next couple of years, there is going to be this issue, and a major study by 2025 says there's a 40% chance of at least 1 year being 1.5 degrees hotter than the pre-industrial level. So that's the lower of two temperature limits set by the Paris Agreement on climate change. So yeah, the conclusion comes in a report published by the World Meteorological Organization, WMO. That's right. They were talking about this, and they say there's going to be a probability, that the 40% chance of at least in 1 year is going to be 1.5 degrees hotter. So 1.5 degrees Celsius. It doesn't sound like it's a lot, but imagine if that is going to pile up year after year after year. Exactly. It gets you wondering, oh, so am I going to be living in an oven? Hopefully not. Hopefully 2050 will bring the change that we need. But to get there, we need to focus on what is happening right now at this very moment, at this very, time in space, and this very present moment, how we're going to address all this. And yeah, it shows that right now there's the lower of two temperature limits set by the Paris Agreement. That's what they're setting, and their agreement is that. So the conclusion, all this has been published by the WMO. So the analysis is based on modeling by the UK Met Office and climate researchers in 10 different countries, including the US and China. And in the last decade, it was estimated that the chance of any 1 year reaching the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold was only 20 degrees. So 20%, I apologize, 20% rather. So this new assessment puts the risk at 40%. So right now they're saying, okay, it's from 20, it's drastically risen to 40. Where are we now? And Leon Hermanson, a senior Met Office scientist, has said that comparison of all these projected temperatures with those of the 1850s and the 1900s show a clear rise. There is a significant rise. I mean, duh, you got to think about it like this. That was the industrial period where all these technologies, there's a technological boom. So obviously factories, coal mines, and a lot of pollution. Vehicles were not as clean as they are now. And yeah, it shows, there is a clear rise. So what it means is that we are approaching that 1.5 degrees Celsius, and we're not there yet, but we are getting super, super close. And time is running out for action, which we need to do right now. We need to be, we need to be alert. We need to find a plan of action. We need to make sure we implement it. So the researchers point out, though, that even if one of the 5 years is 1.5 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial level, then it'll be a temporary situation. Yeah, that's right. The situation is going to be like this. So there's going to be a temperature rise since there's always been a temperature rise, and this was since the 1850s. So that's, what is expected. If you look at the projections in charts, it shows there was a rise in 1850s, and it went on between the year of 1875 and then towards 1950 to the 1975 there was a rise. There was pretty much a plateau, and then it just spikes from 1975 to 2025. There's going to be an expected rise in all of the temperature levels. So that is scary to think. A huge change, a huge difference within that small time span and that gap. Although we are so technologicalized, we can come up with these kind of statistics, these kind of data to show and pinpoint like, hey, listen, this is what's going to happen in the next couple of years if we don't act now, if we don't proceed with caution, if we don't consider what is going on around us. And natural variability will also mean the following few years will be more slightly cooler as well. And it could be another decade or two or more before the 1.5 degrees Celsius limit is crossed permanently. So we can reach that point, and it'll take a couple of years, maybe a couple of decades or two before we reach that point. And when it does, though, it's going to be permanent. We can't change anything about it. So the Paris Agreement established the goal of keeping the temperature increase in the global average to no more than 2 degrees Celsius. That's right. And try not to surpass 1.5. And that's understood to mean a huge long period rather than a single year. So according to Dr. Jory Rogelji, the director of research at the Grantham Institute, Imperial College of London, the 1.5 degrees Celsius in the Met Office announcement shouldn't be actually rather confused with the 1.5 limit in the Paris Agreement. So the Paris Agreement refers to global warming. That is the temperature increase of our planet once we smooth out year-to-year variations. So a single year hitting 1.5 degree doesn't mean the Paris limits are breached. So it's nevertheless, though, very, very bad news if you think about it. And he went on to say, it tells us once again the climate action to date is wholly insufficient and immediate. It looks like it's insufficient, and emissions need to be reduced urgently to zero to halt global warming. And we need to stop global warming at all costs. So this landmark report by the UN panel in 2018 highlighted, the impacts of climate change are far more severe when the increase is greater than 1.5 degrees Celsius. At the moment, projections suggest that even the recent pledges to cut emissions of greenhouse gases, the world is on course to heat up by 3 degrees. That is crazy. Imagine if your temperature is at 28 degrees and it increases to another 3 degrees. It doesn't sound like it much. 20, 31, it's not that big of a deal. You don't really feel the difference. But imagine if you are in a Saharan country or in the Middle East and the temperature is from 40 degrees, it just bounces up to another 3 degrees. Then you're talking about the heat. Then you know the heat is reaching that threshold where it's going to be crazy. And I was just giving you a hypothetical number right there. 40 degrees in those kind of countries, it might be even more than that. It could be even crossing 40s, 50s. So another 3 degrees added to that. I mean, you can literally put you can cook an egg on top of your car because it's that hot outside. So this is something that will, and thinking about the changes as well when it comes to a lot of these fungi and a lot of these chemical reactions when it comes to animals, plants, they have a certain degree, they have a certain temperature threshold that they can work on. They have enzymes, proteins, and all of that, that work according to how the temperature is. So if there is a 3 degrees, margin, it's going to be a very, very significant thing. So you can expect a lot of animals, a lot of plants dying by the time we reach to that point. And this is something that we need to prevent right now, because if we don't do this right now, who is going to do it? We need to step up to this point. And at the moment, projections suggest that even with the recent pledges to cut down the emissions of these greenhouse gases, the world is on a course to heat up, like I said, by 3 degrees Celsius. And the WMO Secretary General, Professor Petteri Talas, said the results of the new research were more than just statistics. It's more than just numbers. It's more than just figures. And this study shows, with a high level of scientific skill, that we are getting measurably and inexorably closer to the lower target of the Paris Agreement on climate change. And it's it's another wake-up call that the world needs, to fast-track commitment to slash these greenhouse gas emissions and to achieve carbon neutrality. This is what we need right now. We need to get to that point where we reach carbon neutrality to make sure, we don't get to that point where it's going to be irreparable. We can't recover from it anymore. And before all these plants and animals and species die. So Professor Edwin Hawkins, a climate scientist at the University of Readings, said that if the new forecast is proved right, it will, and it does not mean that we've exceeded the Paris Agreement limits. And he points out the 2 individual months in 2016 saw a rise of 1.5 degrees Celsius. So as far as climate change goes, though, he talks about all these things, and he says, as the climate warms, we'll get more months above 1.5 degrees Celsius, and then a sequence of them, and then a whole year on an average, and then above 1.5, and then 2, and then 3 years, and then virtually every single year is what he's trying to see. He's saying once in a while we get these sporadic moments where there's going to be a rise, 1.5 degrees. Okay, it's going to be very sporadic at first. It's going to be like very erratic. You don't know when it's going to happen. In a year, it could happen once or twice. And then you get those moments where it could be 2 days or 3 days, and then suddenly it's a week, a month. And then from a month, it becomes a couple of months, and then a whole year long. And then it goes on for 3-4 years. And then finally it's going to be permanent. So this is something that is, very serious in gravity, and the gravity of this whole thing is very, very concerning. So it's also a sudden cliff edge also, that it's more than just a slope that we're already on. And as the climate warms, the effects get even worse and worse. It's going to get even more worse. Like I said, all the pollution right now, what we're trying to do, we're trying to cut down on these carbon emission, these gases, greenhouse gases, because these are a problem. These need to be cut down. A lot of countries have pushed back on a lot of things, a lot of events. And with regards to the COVID pandemic happening too, we did push out a lot of events out. But in concern to that, we have a lot of this global warming, and it is a concern because, like I said, in the couple of years right now, that if we don't take action, this is the decade. This is the next 10 years. This is the 10 years that will count if we make sure we implement it as a country that is, as a first world country. I'd like to think that we could move forward, a country that doesn't need we don't need financial support from other countries to live. I think we as a country need to be the forefront runners on top of this thing. We need to be the people who set an example, because leaders set by example, and this is the example we need to set right now to the globe, so that they can take action towards this, and then they can follow as well. Because, like I said, we've set a line. We've set a line in the sand to try to limit all of this and to limit the temperature rise. But it's clear that we need to recognize that we're seeing the effects of climate change already in the UK and around the world. And those effects will continue to become even more severe. And the report, that comes in approach to the COP26 summit on the climate change due to be held in Glasgow in November. And the summit, aims to raise ambitions among these world leaders and on tackling the climate change crisis as well. So a lot of figures are going to be showing up, though, in this next COP26. And one of that is Greta Thunberg. Yeah, you won't be able to expect her in her dramatic speeches right now. And although, I do make fun, I do like to poke fun at Greta, but at the same time, she does raise the valuable question of how we need to take action right now. And this is very important, because if we don't take action right now, the damage that is going to happen, that's going to be done, is going to be permanent, and there is no recovery from that. There will be no more point towards where we can recover from, and that is going to cause a hassle. That's going to be a big, big problem, and we need to make sure that we address this issue as much as possible. And hey, with that being said, though, we did speak a lot of these things and a lot of these topics, but make sure you guys tune in. And if you have any dedications or shout outs, feel free to hit me up on those numbers, and also check us out on our web pages. We're also pretty big on Instagram, so check us out there as well. And with that, we're going to be taking a real quick break before we return for the final stretch of the show. And we'll be right back after this break. Welcome back to Relax Radio with me, Nick, giving you guys company and entertained all the way until, the time that is 6 p.m. We got about a couple of half an hour more to go, actually, before we got to end the show. But before that, though, we are talking about all these things that is related right now in UK. So one of this is, like I said, the virus is going around. There's a lot of these restrictions, and they're planning to ease them down at the moment. And the plan is to get it completely 100% out of, make sure we get out of this whole restriction. And there's a lot of concerns still going on. A lot of governments are, taking the steps forward and taking the steps that are necessary at this point. And looking at things like in Ireland right now, the Irish government also has been approving further easing of restrictions. They've been easing down on their restrictions. And it's just good news for the Irish people right now. People in Ireland must be having the time right now that, they're finally getting to that point. So the government has been approving, and they've approved several measures, though, that will allow for a further phased out reopening of the society and economy over the summer. So it had already been agreed hotels in the Republic of Ireland can reopen from the 2nd of June onwards. So followed by this whole outdoor service at restaurants and pubs from the 7th of June. Cinemas and gyms can reopen as well. But on Friday, ministers also signed off on a deal, and that will allow indoor pubs and restaurant services to resume on the 5th of June. So it's great to see, that they are planning to get this they're trying to sign this all off and get the country back and running. And they're trying to, lift it from that position where it was stuck in. And like I said, on Friday, they planned all of these things. And international travel also will resume on the 19th of July for fully vaccinated passengers. So if you're a passenger, if you're from Ireland and you're fully vaccinated, you got 2 doses of a certain vaccine, well, chances are, you can travel and you're allowed to go internationally. And the cabinet has also approved plans to allow spectators to attend a number of sporting events and music gigs in June and July on a trial basis. That's right. This is all right now going on the assumption that, we don't get to that point where there's going to be a huge, major, significant number of cases or spikes. That is the matter at hand. And this is just, another thing that they want to address. So like I said, if you're expecting to go see your favorite football team playing or cricket team, well, look no more, because that could actually be happening. And there's going to be big music gigs, celebrities can come in, and that will be happening, though, as a trial basis in places on the respective months of June and July. So restaurants and pubs, hairdressers, and other close contact services had been closed in the Republic of Ireland since Christmas Eve. So since Christmas Eve, all these places have been closed down. And, it's mostly due to the pandemic, and they're trying to avoid and cause another problem, another rise in cases, and, contribute to the whole rise of the surge in the virus cases in the country. And the government also announced of a further phased out lockdown relaxation comes 24 hours after Irish Health Minister Stephen Donnelly indicated that the Republic will have difficulty meeting its vaccination targets. So it's been hoped that over 80% of adults would have their first vaccine and 55% their second. So this is what the goals are. These are the estimates. 80% of the adults would have their first vaccine. This is what has been hoped for. This is what the projected numbers and the figures that they've thought. And 55% are going to get their second dose by the end of June. That's the plan, to get it all done by the end of the time. But Mr. Donnelly blamed the difficulty on supply issues with the Johnson & Johnson and Oxford AstraZeneca vaccines. So there's been issues when it comes to the supplies of these vaccines, these particular vaccines that I've currently named. And it just shows, that the expected failure to meet vaccinations targets has not been deterred, and it's not deterred a lot of these ministers from opening up society, despite some concerns about the spread of Indian variant of the COVID-19 and this virus, that's neighboring in the United Kingdom right now. So the Talent Search, Michael Martin is expected to make a television tea time address elaborating on the government's plans and decisions. And so concerns about this whole variant right now is happening in in places like this. And they're talking about, when you look at the situation right now, the Irish government is facing a lot of this, and there are talks about the Indian variant, entering their lands and all that. So earlier on Friday, the Dynasty, the Deputy Prime Minister Leo Varadkar, said the Republic of Ireland is not in a position to restore the common travel area just yet, following advice from the National Public Health Emergency Teams, or the NPHET. So there are real concerns. There are real problems. They are trying to address these things about the prevalence of the variant at the, that first originated in India, in Great Britain. So the question is, there are concerns about how is this persisting? Is it still there? It looks like it's here to stay. So what do we do to get rid of this? And travel within the common travel area, the CTA, has been permitted for people in Northern Ireland since the 24th of May. So you can travel within the common areas, that have been permitted for all this. So speaking on this, Mr. Varadkar also said the lifting of restrictions on international travel would be a phased return, but he warned that it would not be as it was before the pandemic. And he confirmed that all the EU countries are coming off the mandatory hotel quarantine list, and vaccination program gives confidence. And asked why restrictions were being eased, well, Mr. Varadkar said cases are stable. Right now, the situation is stable. It looks like it's going okay. And only about 2% of the new cases are people over the ages of 65, and less than 2% of new cases are these health workers. So that shows, how effective the vaccines are at the moment. And with concerns to this, the vaccine program, even though we are suffering supply difficulties, is pretty much where we thought it would be all. And that would give all of us, the confidence to ease this whole restriction down. So the vaccine program, though they're suffering right now in supplies. There's not a very scarce, they're getting supplies, but it's not enough. And it's still, it's giving them confidence that the restrictions, even though it is not enough, the vaccines, it's giving them a confidence of, easing up the restrictions in the country. So the deputy ministers also went on. He also confirmed Ireland will not meet its vaccination program targets for June. So the projected targets that they are planning to hit by the time June comes looks like it's not going to be a very feasible plan at the moment. It's not sustainable. So the target was by the end of June, 82% of people would be offered a vaccine. So we do know that it's likely AstraZeneca and Johnson & Johnson aren't going to be able to deliver the supplies they're contracted to. But we still expect to be in the mid-70s in one or both end of June. And we can make it up by the, all of the, so in terms of percentage, rather, people who had received either one or both of these jabs by the end of June. And we can, they want to make it up by the end of July, when 2.5 million people will be fully vaccinated. They guarantee that this is something that's going to happen. So yes, they're behind because of the factors outside of their control right now, and that's got to do with supplies, but not so much that it will change any of their decisions currently right now. So let's see, what it goes like with the situation in Ireland, and also taking a look at the things and what is going on in Scotland as well. The Scottish government, and they still remain in level 3 lockdown, and that's in Glasgow. At the moment, Glasgow doesn't look like it's shining really too bright at the moment. Unfortunately, they're still at a level 3. So Glasgow will continue to be the only part of Scotland under level 3 restriction for at least another week. So there's been speculations, though, that the city would be able to join the rest of the Scottish mainland in level 2. But First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, she said that there was still concern about an outbreak of the Indian variant of the virus in the city. So she said that the variant was now accounting for at least half of the new COVID cases in Glasgow. So Mr. Sturgeon said it was hoped that the city would be able to move to level 2 on Saturday next week, with the final decision being taken on Tuesday. But, this is something that they are hoping for. And I understand, what she is trying to do. Nicola Sturgeon wants to get the country back into place and make sure that everything is going according to plan. And unfortunately, there's been unfortunate circumstances for this to happen. But, this is just how the way things go. And it shows, she's trying right now very hard. And she said that there were signs that the situation in Glasgow was beginning to stabilize. And they're coming to a point where, it's getting stable. with the numbers of new cases falling in recent days in the postcode areas in the south side of the city, which had been center of the outbreak of this Indian variant. So yeah, the level 3 restrictions rather, it means that people are not allowed to meet each other in each other's homes, pubs, restaurants, and are not able to sell alcohol indoors. So this is the whole point of level 3. So right now at level 3, because Glasgow is at level 3, they're not allowed to have people, they're not allowed to have people meet in each other's homes. Pubs and restaurants are not also going to be able to sell alcohol indoors. So right now, this is one of the crutches and the problems that they are facing right now in Glasgow. So many of these businesses as well in Glasgow, owners say that they are struggling to survive after spending 270 days under tough restrictions. And they've criticized the Scottish government for not giving them more financial support. And opposition parties had demanded urgent action, that needs to take the city back on a level footing with the rest of the country, which restrictions have been eased in recent weeks as quickly as possible because of this. So the rest of mainland Scotland is currently due to join most of the country's island communities in the level 1 on the 7th of June before the country moves on to level 0, meaning something close to normality on the 28th of June. So mobile testing and vaccination centers have been set up in many parts of Glasgow over the past few weeks, and there's been no significant increase in the number of people being hospitalized with the virus. But the public health experts suggest that it is mainly younger and unvaccinated people who are contracting it. So right now, it's not the people who are older, but rather the youth of the country, the younger generation of the country is getting all this. And there has not been any increase or significant increase in the number of people, being hospitalized with the virus. And it just shows, the public health experts say that they suggest that, all this is mostly with the younger people who not get vaccinated. But the case numbers have risen, though, by about 30%. That's right, 30% from 112 cases per 100,000 to 136 per 100,000. And that's over the past week, while the rates of the positive tests has also crept up from 4% to 4.4%. So the R number, effectively the rate at which the virus spreads for Scotland, is now estimated to stand at about 1.3, and largely driven by the number of cases in Glasgow. So latest figures released shortly after the briefing revealed the Glasgow weekly case rates have dropped to 135.5 per 100,000 people. And then that's the first fall in almost a month. That's right. That is the first drop we've seen in almost 1 month's time. So Ms. Sturgeon said the decision to keep Scotland's largest city in level 3 for a further week had been very, very difficult. It'd been very, very hard. But she said the number of new cases continued to be uncomfortably high despite the signs of progress. So although there's been no sign of progress, right now the number of cases continue to be high. It's right now, although we're stabilizing, we're at the point where the Scottish government, people of Scotland, and the number of cases in Glasgow has been stabilizing. It's not at a point where we need it to be. It's currently pretty high. Although it is stable, the number of cases is dropping, but it's pretty high up there. So we're trying to get it back down to a lower level is, what they are trying to say. But, hopefully this is something that they can do. Hopefully we can push on to something more like this. And Ms. Sturgeon also went on to say, all of these latest figures, and there's been a fall because of this. And she said the decision to keep Scotland's largest city in level 3 for a further week had been very difficult because this is the largest city in Scotland. This is the capital where everything is going on, where everything is happening. So to keep it in a level 3 where they're not allowed to sell alcohol indoors, where people can't even meet inside houses, it's going to make it very difficult for a lot of people. It's going to make it hard. And she said that Nicola Sturgeon went on to say, and she further stressed and emphasized on this, she said the number of new cases continued to be uncomfortably high. So like I said, although we've reached a stabilization of the cases, we have reached some kind of plateau, rather, I'd like to say. And although the number of cases are also slightly dropping, it's still at a point and at a figure where it is too high right now to be even considered safe. So what we're trying to do right now is to get it down to that level where the government and the people can look at it and be like, okay, it looks like everything is getting back on track. everything looks like it's getting safer, and we are getting to that point where, it's not as uncontrolled as it was in the beginning. The cases are not going to be sporadic because of that. So this is something, they are getting forward with. So Nicole Sturgeon is trying to make sure that that happens. But she said, like I said, it's very uncomfortably high. And although there's been signs of the progress, it's still high. And the First Minister also added, the view of the National Incident Management Team is that it would be premature to move Glasgow out of the level 3 immediately while the situation remains so fragile. So, however, the situation, if it continues to stabilize, though, Ms. Sturgeon said the government team would support a move to level 2 at the end of next week. So by the time, hopefully next week, this is something that they want to do. If the situation is getting stable, if it gets to that point where it's going to be very stable and then we're not going to have issues like this popping up, well, this is something, that they can look forward to. And Ms. Sturgeon is, saying that if this does continue, the management team would support a move to level 2 by the time the end of the next week happens. So the situation in Glasgow right now, looking at charts also, it is pretty high. And like I said, although it's 100 for 100,000 people, right now it was at a point by the 17th of March, so 2021, it reached a peak of 140, close to 140 cases per 100,000 people. That's a lot of people right there. So in 100,000 people, at least 1 in 1,000 is getting the virus. And then it reached a drop. So between the time span, the grace period, rather, the window of the 17th of March, that is 2021. So between the 17th of March and the 4th of May, there's been a significant drop. But then between the 4th of May and the 20th of May, there has been a significant rise. So yeah, the rising figure is crazy. Looking at the numbers, it reached to the point even higher. It's close to 150 even. So 150 cases, close to 150 over 100,000 people. So that's just a lot of figure. It just shows that between that small time span, there was a huge, huge amount. There was a very huge gap in the number of cases in the country. And again, responding to the announcements, the Federation of Small Business said its members in Glasgow had been used to these weekly Friday disappointments, with this one even more galling because of the sunny weather that is forecast for the bank holidays back in Monday. So yeah, its chairman, Andrew McKay, said the businesses and employees are hit hardest by these ongoing restrictions, and they need to, proper support right now. This is very important. So he went on to say, although this is very important, we need to address this. And the Glasgow industry right now is especially the hospitality businesses are struggling. He went on to say its chairman, Andrew McRae, said the businesses and they are all struggling from all this. And the Glasgow hospitality industry was given 2 days to scrap their reopening plans. That was earlier in this month. But even now, after 2 weeks, we still don't have adequate financial support measures in place. And that is of concern. People are saying, how are we going to start our businesses? How are we going to pick up from this? How are we going to move if we are stuck in a situation and we are struggling financially? Because at the same time, we have to understand we need a way to breathe. We need a way to take a breath, and we don't have these things dragging us down. So one of this is right now the crutch that we have is the financially people. A lot of these businesses are struggling and they're finding it very hard to stay afloat, least alone to pick up from this whole pandemic situation. So what is the government doing about this is the concern. So the Scottish government went on to say, further funding had been made available to Glasgow City Council to provide additional support for businesses in hospitality and leisure in Glasgow, with grants ranging from £250 to £750 per week. So yeah, the Scottish Conservative leader Douglas Ross said people and business in Glasgow had been living under the restrictions for far too long. I mean, they've been to that point. They are fed up. They are stretched out thin enough. It's like butter on bread, and it's spread out. When you put too little butter on bread, it's gonna spread out too thin. So that's the situation right now in Glasgow, where people are fed up at that point. And the target that more targeted action was needed to deal with these local outbreaks. So Scottish Labour leader Jackie Bailey said the government had to be able to tackle further local outbreaks without a draconian lockdown measures being put in place. And yeah, because these restrictions are very restrictive. You are not allowed to get out of the house. You are not allowed to go and meet people indoor. You are not allowed to drink alcohol indoors. You're not allowed to do anything. You're not allowed to have people in your house. So these are it's going to make people struggle, especially when it comes to what about people who don't have proper support bubbles? What about people who don't have, the means necessary to support themselves? Who are going to look after them? That is the concern that a lot of these people and businesses. What if a business is, going? A lot of these businesses are going bankrupt. Who's gonna help them? How are they gonna be financially able to cope up with this? So the government needs to make that action now, that action decision. They need to have an action plan, mapped out, and they need to make sure that they implement it as soon as practical. And the first minister also said, she'd give an update next Tuesday on whether and to what extent the proposed move to level 1 for mainland council areas will proceed as planned. So she said, if we see a significant reduction in the health harms of COVID, even as the numbers rise, then hopefully we'll continue, allow us to change our approaches. And because we will be able to rely then on other public health measures rather than blanket restrictions to keep the outbreaks under control, is what she went on to say. Nicole Sturgeon did point out all these things. And there's been, though, further to this. So the numbers of people in the hospitals with the virus has increased from 68 3 weeks ago to 90 today. That's right. You think about it, from 68 3 weeks ago, so almost a month ago, and now it's just 90. But there were more than 2,000 people in the hospitals at the peak of the second wave back in January. So that was even worse. Back in January, it was a horrid time to be in. That was the worst case scenario. That was how the country was hit in such a way we did not expect this, is what happened. So these are just not right now, although 90 is not a great number, compared to how it was 2,000 people in the hospital back at the peak of the second wave. Well, this is somewhat relatively better. And in the number of COVID cases in these intensive care units right now is very low. So the first minister said she had considered whether additional restrictions needed to be reintroduced in these 3 council areas. And all of these areas like Clackmannanshire, Renfrewshire, and East Renfrewshire, where there were relatively high levels of the virus. So all these 3 areas have relatively low populations, though. If you look down to the population number, it's not as much as you think. And the number of cases is also low in absolute terms. So with the public health teams, they're confident that this outbreak, they're able to be controlled using these existing measures. They're saying, okay, why don't we get to that point? Why doesn't Glasgow come down to level 2? It's a concern. It's a problem, but that's just how it is. So there's been 641 new positive cases of the virus recorded across Scotland in just 24 hours. That's right. Let that sink in. 24 hours, and that's how many cases have risen. So the highest daily figure since 25th of March. So the deaths of a further 2 people who had been previously tested positive for the virus had been recorded, while the number of people in hospitals has risen to 90, with 6 patients in intensive care. That's right. These are things that is going on in these places, like in COVID, in Glasgow, and the Scottish government right now are doing their best. You can see they are struggling at the moment. Yes, every part of the country is struggling. Every part of the UK, there are struggles going on. But this is something that hopefully we can come out of and make sure we beat this whole thing. Because like I said, end of the day, these are problems that we need to address. And right now, Scotland is doing their best when it comes down to these kind of things. And looking at all these things, like I said, overall, taking the point of today, we are still not there yet. We're still not, although we want to reach that point of making sure we hit that net zero, making sure we get down the pandemic level to back to normal, the whole country back to normal. There are still struggles like this going on, and it's when you're trying to keep it real, this is just how it is. Our situation isn't the greatest. We are at a very tight position, but if we can play our part, as individuals, if we can play our part as a whole for the whole, a whole of a gear, like it's like we're a cogwheel of, in the grand scheme of things, we are just another gear in all of this. So when you think about that, and when you think about how if we play our parts right, and if we make sure that we follow all through with this, and we try to cut down, and the government also implements all of these emissions when it comes down to emissions, try to cut down on the emissions, and all of these things, hopefully we can get to the point where we can return back to normalcy. because the government is trying. You can see that, Nicola Sturgeon is just one of the few ministers right now, first ministers, talking about all of this in Scotland, and they're trying to get Glasgow back to that point. Because right now, if this continues to go on until July even, it's going to be bad, because what will happen is this will push back the COP26, and that's something that we cannot afford right now, because we are the forefront, and we're going to be the UK is going to represent a whole body of these people, and this summit is going to be a big summit. It's going to be one of the biggest summit. So if we push this back, and if we are unable to do this, well, it will be a huge blow to the UK and the confidence that we have, especially when it comes to the ties between the other countries. So right now, the UK needs to step up its game. And I believe that, if we do step up their game, and if they do still, implement all of this, and right now, with the good news coming out that there's a new vaccine going on, the Janssen, that is hopefully something to look forward to. We can get to that point where, if they say with the research that they're doing, they hope that another third vaccine will make it better. I mean, if a third dose, a third number, and a third boost, that will help, fight against this whole Indian variant. It's worth it. It's worth investigating on, at least to ponder on, to look into it even deeper, and to dive in and find out more about this particular thing. Because if we can do this, if we can get to that point where we are at a situation where the number of vaccines are being applied, and the number of cases are breaking the cases and the links in the country, well, we can reach herd immunity, because that's what we want. End of the day, that is what we are striving for. We're striving to reach that point where all these cases are done. We can get back to normal, because people, like I said, and I've said this often in the show, people are frustrated and are fed up and tired of all of this. They don't like staying at home. Nobody likes staying at home and being cooped up at home forever, because we are beings that need to travel, and we need to see more. We need interaction. We need social interactions as well. That's how we thrive as a community. So people right now are stagnating, and I understand with the restrictions going on, it is easing up. But at the same time, just because it's easing up does not mean necessarily that you should go and enjoy your life again to the fullest. You're allowed to, but at the same time, you got to be considerate of the person beside you. Could you put their lives at risk? Wouldn't it be better to just wait at home, ride the storm, and wait until this whole situation dies down? And then we can get back to that point, where it's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. And, where we can push this whole situation aside and be like, okay, we're free, at a point where we don't even need masks anymore. We need that point right now. And this is a win all of us in the UK need. I mean, if you think so, if you are opposed to this, or if you have anything that you think the government should actually do, feel free to hit me up. You can call me. The numbers are 07852-473-473. Any kind of thought, on this matter would be definitely appreciated. And with that being said, it is about that time of the day for me to head on out of here. But don't worry, I'll be catching you guys again on Monday, the same time, same place, right here on Relax Radio, RELAKS, without the X, because we definitely believe in possibility. And that, my name is Nick, and I'm out of here. Peace and much love.